In this video, I shall be talking about action painting prominent from the 1940s to the early 60s, mainly in America. It is quite similar to the technique adopted by surrealist painters. When it first emerged as part of abstract expressionism, it was seen as one of the most revolutionary events in American art. It was a style of painting in which paint was spontaneously dribbled, smeared, or splashed onto the canvas rather than being carefully applied. The Encyclopedia Britannica explains it as a direct, instinctual, and highly dynamic kind of art that involves the spontaneous application of vigorous, sweeping brush strokes and the chance effects of dripping and spilling paint onto the canvas. The term action painting was invented by the American critic Harold Rosenberg and appeared for the first time in the article American Action Painters, published in the 1952 December edition of Art News. To provide a quick background, the artists and the various techniques are associated with the movement Abstract Expressionism and the New York School of the late 1940s, 50s, and 60s. Some famous artists of this movement are Jackson Pollock, Willem de Kooning, Mark Tobey, Mark Rothko, Franz Kline, and many others. Abstract Expressionism was a post-World War II art movement in America. It emphasized on the artist's freedom to express emotions through non-conventional means, and action painting emerged as a style of painting within it. However, with little or no difference in the idea behind it, the term action painting has been used interchangeably with abstract expressionism. But some still believe action painting to be a style of painting under abstract expressionism, and it also includes other quite similar styles like color field painting and gestural abstraction. Abstract expressionism, in turn, was itself a product of expressionism, a movement in the arts in which the artist does not depict objective reality, but rather a subjective expression of inner experience. Whereas surrealism had found inspiration in the theories of Sigmund Freud, the abstract gravitated towards existential philosophy, made popular by European intellectuals such as Martin Heidegger and Jean-Paul Sartre. Given the atrocities of World War II, existentialism appealed to the abstract expressionists. Sartre's position that an individual's actions might give life meaning suggested the importance of the artist's creative process. Through the artist's physical struggle with his materials, a painting itself might ultimately come to serve as a lasting mark of one's existence. Each of the artists involved with abstract expressionism eventually developed an individual style that can be easily recognized as evidence of this artistic practice and contribution. For example, in the case of Willem de Kooning, his painting Woman 1, the visible brush strokes and thickly applied pigment are typical of the action painting style. Looking at Woman 1, we can easily imagine de Kooning at work, using strong slashing gestures, adding globs of paint to create heavily built-up surfaces that could be physically worked and reworked with his brush and palette knife. Thus, action painting can be said to be characterized by a highly charged, impulsive style of abstract painting during which paint is energetically splashed, spilled, or dribbled onto a canvas, usually placed face up on the floor. Action painting became a common critical term to describe styles marked by impulsive brushwork and unstable or energetic composition, which seem to express the state of consciousness held by the artist in the heat of creation. Action painting thereby shared the spontaneity of automatism. Although, at first glance, it seems that any kindergartner can do it, these artists cultivate the interplay of skill and unplanned occurrences to determine the painting's final outcome. The painter Jackson Pollock, dubbed Jack the Dripper, is one of the most famous proponents of this style of painting. He also challenged traditional conventions of painting by using synthetic resin-based paints and using hardened brushes, sticks, and even basting syringes to apply paint. In the process of making paintings in this way, he moved away from figurative representation and challenged the Western tradition of using easel and brush. Here is a short clip of what this style of painting meant to him. It has been borrowed from a BBC documentary on Jackson Pollock and action painting.
My painting is direct. I usually paint on the floor. I enjoy working on a large canvas. I feel more at home, more at ease in a big area. Having the canvas on the floor, I feel nearer, more a part of the painting. Sometimes I use a brush, but often prefer using a stick. Sometimes I pour the paint straight out of the can. I like to use a dripping, fluid paint. A method of painting is the natural growth out of a need. I want to express my feelings rather than illustrate them. Technique is just a means of arriving at a statement.
William D. Koning swashbuckled with loaded brushes and garish colors that seemed to collide rather than settle down into coexistence. Mark Tobey wrote his painted marks as if he were inventing an unintelligible alphabet for an exotic language that no one knew or would even bother to learn. His work was based on his study of Chinese calligraphy and brush painting, as well as Buddhism. Abstract Expressionism's physicality, or action painting's physicality, comes from the explorations of inner turmoil and anxiety. Some of this distress came from exposure to the disturbing reports of horrors and pain endured during World War II. Action painting signaled a major shift in the aesthetic perspective of New York school painters. According to Harold Rosenberg, the canvas was not an object, but rather an arena in which to act. Rosenberg's critique shifted the emphasis from the object to the struggle of painting itself, with the finished work being only the physical manifestation, a kind of residue of the actual work of art which was in the process of the painting's creation. He said, what was to go onto the canvas was not a picture, but an event. For Clement Greenberg, it was the physicality of the painting's clotted and oil-caked surfaces that was the key to understanding them as documents of the artist's existential struggle. Some believe that the painting must not be viewed on the wall vertically as museums showcase them, but rather must be laid on the floor, so that we might try and see what Pollock and the other painters of the movement saw in them. Let us now look at one of Jackson Pollock's paintings and try and analyze the idea behind it. This painting is called 1A and was made by Pollock in 1948. It is interesting to note that Pollock refrained from giving his paintings any title. He believed that not giving it a title and instead just numbering it would allow for more space for interpretation. It would not restrict the various meanings which one could draw from it. Keeping in mind the post-war context, we can say that the painting expresses the inner struggles, the ideas and beliefs which are one whole big mess. We must also remember that what we are looking at is the final product and we're trying to attach some meaning to it, while the whole point of action painting was to give importance to the act of painting, to think of what could have possibly been going through in the mind of the artist. What kind of emotion was he feeling when he painted it? When seen in the light of the post-World War society and the existential crisis, the painting can be validated to be an expression of the life of the artist himself. If we look at the top right-hand corner, we can see handprints there. It seems that Pollock has imprinted his hands there. This adds to the technique of action painting, where the artist is using unconventional methods of painting. Artists have been known to use their hands before. However, an impression of their hands suggests the grounding of efforts or an attempt to find an anchor. The speed, the energy, the aggression which goes into it can be said to be indicative of the American society then.